Every search is both an emergency and a mystery. Someone is missing. Time matters. Conditions are changing, and we do not yet know the full story. A search and rescue response must be both rapid and effective. Speed alone is not enough. Effectiveness alone is not enough. We must move quickly, but we must move correctly. It is important to remember that while this is an emergency, it is not our emergency. That belongs to the family and the subject. Our role is not to mirror their panic, but to bring calm and competence into a chaotic situation. Professionalism under pressure is what allows us to think clearly and act effectively. When someone goes missing, clues are almost always present. The environment holds information. The subject leaves indicators. Movement leaves evidence. The challenge is not whether clues exist, it's whether we have the skills and discipline to recognize them. Clue consciousness is critical. Searchers must develop the habit of constantly observing, not just looking for a person, but looking for signs of passage, disturbance, patterns that do not belong, or items that appear out of place. A successful search depends on rapid response, organized technique, discipline in execution, and observation. Searching is a deliberate, methodical effort to reduce uncertainty. We are going to discuss techniques, behaviors, and planning concepts that allow us to search effectively, not randomly, and to bring clarity to the mystery. Search theory is the logical application of probability and planning principles to help locate missing persons efficiently. It uses information about subject behavior, terrain, time factors, and environmental conditions to prioritize where to search first. Rather than treating every area as equal, search theory helps create a probability-based picture of the search area. This allows leaders to focus resources on locations where the subject is most likely to be found. The point last seen, or PLS, is the specific location where a subject was last visually observed. It is often one of the most important pieces of information in a search. Because it is a confirmed sighting, it may also serve as an initial planning point, or IPP. LKP stands for Last Known Point. It is a confirmed location where the subject was known to be present but not necessarily seen directly. Unlike a point last seen, PLS, which is based on a visual observation, an LKP is often established through evidence. Examples of an LKP might include a parked vehicle at a trailhead, a signature in a trail register, a campsite that can be verified, a distress signal location, or a confirmed electronic ping. The LKP is based on verifiable information even if no one physically saw the subject at that exact moment. In some cases, the LKP and PLS may be the same. In other cases, they are different. Both can serve as initial planning points, depending on which location is most reliable and most relevant to the timeline of events. The PLS is based on sight. The LKP is based on confirmed evidence. An initial planning point, or IPP, is the location from which search planning begins. It is the anchor point used to model subject movement, assign probability areas, and develop early search strategy. When a reliable PLS exists, it often becomes the IPP. From that point, search planners consider subject behavior, terrain, time elapsed, and environmental factors to estimate how far and in what direction the subject may have traveled. Probability of area, or POA, is an estimate of how likely it is that the subject is located within a specific search area. It may be based on data, subject behavior, terrain analysis, investigative information, or informed judgment. Whether subjective or data-driven, POA helps determine where resources should be applied first. Probability of detection, or POD, is an informed opinion that represents the likelihood that a searcher will find the subject if the subject is in the area being searched. It answers a simple question. If the subject was in the segment, what is the chance we would have detected them? POD is influenced by coverage, critical separation, terrain, visibility, searcher skill, and pace. POD is expressed as a percentage. A higher POD reflects greater thoroughness and a higher chance of detection within that segment. POD measures how well we searched an area, not whether the subject was there. PODs help evaluate whether researching an area is warranted. Critical separation, or CS, is a practical application of sweep width. Sweep width is a scientific measure of detectability. Critical separation is how we apply that concept in the field. Critical separation is the practical spacing between searchers that increases the likelihood that an object placed halfway between them remains detectable. Once established, CS spacing directly determines the width of each search lane and guides how the team advances through the terrain. We are going to take a moment to break down how we determine critical separation. This is something every team member needs to understand and be comfortable doing, as it directly impacts how effectively we search. Historically, the concept of sweep width was developed by the Navy to help determine effective search patterns in the ocean under varying conditions. The ocean, while dynamic, is still a relatively consistent environment, much like the football field you see here. Because of that consistency, they were able to develop standardized charts and measurements based largely on the size of the object they were searching for. We could apply a similar concept in an environment like this. On a football field, a larger object, like a sleeping bag, could be detected from farther away, allowing a team of searchers to spread out more. A smaller object, like a set of keys, however, would require tighter spacing between searchers to ensure it could be seen. In simple terms, spacing is directly influenced by what you're trying to find. If it were dark, the spacing would have to be adjusted for that as well. But we don't search in a football field. Our terrain is uneven, brushy, and constantly changing. While there have been attempts to develop ground-based sweep width charts, they're difficult to apply in real-world conditions. Instead, we use a more practical field method called critical separation. Critical separation is most commonly used during area or grid searches, but the concept can apply to other search tactics as well. To determine it, we place a representative object in the search environment, something like a piece of clothing, a pack, or a water bottle. From that point, searchers move away, typically walking backward, until the object is just barely visible. This process is repeated several times, ideally from different directions, such as the cardinal points or along imaginary spokes radiating from the object. Each searcher notes the distance, usually in paces, at which they can no longer reliably see the object. These measurements are then compared, and an average distance is calculated. For example, if the average visibility distance is 10 paces, the appropriate spacing between searchers would be about 20 paces. This helps ensure that an object located between searchers has a reasonable chance of being detected. Critical separation helps estimate a probability of detection, or POD, typically in the range of 50% for high-visibility objects under those conditions. It is not a guarantee that every object will be found. Instead, it provides a structured way to determine lane spacing based on detectability rather than guessing. Critical separation cannot be predetermined by planners. It must be assessed and confirmed by the searchers on the ground based on actual conditions. Coverage can be thought of as a measure of thoroughness. It reflects how completely a search effort examines a given area. The greater the coverage, the higher the probability of detection, POD, assuming the target is within that area. Coverage is not just about how much ground is covered. It is about how effectively the area is searched. 10 minutes ago, using these acronyms in a sentence might have sounded like gibberish. Now it should make sense. Professional SAR operations rely on the disciplined application of search theory. Before a searcher steps into the field, there are certain critical pieces of information that must be understood. First, searchers must know the name of the subject and the name to call out. Second, searchers must understand what clues have already been found, or what clues may be expected. What was the subject wearing? Knowing whether we are looking for bright clothing, dark clothing, a backpack, or a specific shoe type directly affects clue awareness. Third, searchers must know the PLS or LKP. This provides context. It helps orient the assignment within the larger operational picture and clarifies why the segment has been prioritized. Fourth, searchers must understand their assigned search area. Boundaries must be clearly defined and understood. Searchers should know where the segment begins, where it ends, and how it relates to adjacent teams. Fifth, searchers must understand the command structure and communication plan. Who is operations? Who is the team leader? What channel are we using? How do we report a clue? How do we report a find? No one should enter the field unclear about who or what they are looking for, the particulars of their assignment, or communication procedures. Finally, remember that briefing information is often incomplete and potentially incorrect. Early assumptions may prove false. A subject who is described as familiar with the area may still become disoriented. A person believed to be uninjured may in fact be compromised. Searchers must remain open-minded and adaptable. Do not allow expectations to narrow your observations. Understanding how people move when lost helps guide search strategy. People do not all behave the same way, but there are common patterns. Most lost persons tend to follow the path of least resistance. This may include trails, roads, low foliage drainages, ridgelines, game trails, and open terrain. People often choose routes that are easiest to walk, even if those routes are not leading them in the correct direction. Sometimes a lost person remains on a defined route, such as a trail or road. Occasionally, when they realize they are lost, they may reverse direction and retrace their steps. This is important to know when assigning hasty teams along trails. As frustration increases, some individuals abandon established routes and begin traveling in a self-selected direction. They may attempt to head straight out, go downhill, head toward lights, or follow their own internal logic. This often results in relatively straight-line movement across terrain, ignoring trails and natural travel corridors. Direction sampling occurs when a lost person moves in one direction for a period of time, then changes direction, often repeatedly. This behavior may result in zigzag or wandering patterns as the subject tests different directions in an attempt to self-correct. In addition to basic travel patterns, there are several behaviors that influence how lost people move and where they may be found. Some individuals use travel aids such as fences, streams, power lines, or road edges to guide their movement. These types of linear features may also be referred to as handrails and may direct subjects along predictable paths. Others seek view enhancement. They may climb to higher ground in an effort to see landmarks, locate structures, or gain cell phone coverage. This can shift probability uphill rather than downhill. Lost persons sometimes rely on folk wisdom, such as following water, heading downhill, or walking toward lights. These assumptions may not lead them to safety, but they strongly influence direction of travel. Finally, although we often advise people to stay put, many do not. However, some individuals, especially children, injured subjects, or those with survival training, may remain near their last known location. That possibility must always be considered. Much of the statistical information planners use at the start of a search comes from the book Lost Person Behavior by Robert J. Kester. This work analyzes over 150,000 real search and rescue cases and identifies patterns based on subject category, such as hikers, children, hunters, or dementia patients. It provides statistical probabilities for things like how far subjects typically travel, what terrain features they favor, and where they are most often found. Planners use this data, now also available in an app, to prioritize early search areas and assign initial tasks based on probability instead of guesswork. Search tactics are the techniques we use to locate a lost subject or identify clues. They represent the practical application of everything we've discussed so far: search theory, travel behavior, and organized patterns. Search tactics typically follow a progression. As a search develops, teams may move from faster methods to slower, more deliberate techniques depending on information and conditions. Additionally, tactic selection must match the resources and people available. Their experience and capability determine what methods can be executed safely and effectively. When resources do not match operational needs, mutual aid should be considered. Search tactics generally fall into two categories: indirect, also called passive methods, and direct, also called active methods. Passive search tactics are indirect methods used to gather information, control movement, or encourage detection without necessarily committing teams to ground searching. Examples include containment efforts such as road patrols or trail monitoring, and attraction techniques like sirens, lights, or voice calls. Passive tactics also include reviewing intelligence such as subject history, interviews, and behavioral information. Much of this work is conducted by the incident commander, typically a sheriff's deputy, rather than SAR personnel. Let's take a closer look at some of the passive tactics that we've mentioned. Attraction is an indirect search tactic that assumes the subject is conscious and capable of responding. The purpose of attraction is to prompt the subject to reveal their location through sound, light, or movement. Audible methods may include sirens, whistles, yelling, public address systems, vehicle horns, and calling the subject by name. Remember, when using noise-based attraction methods, silent periods are essential. After broadcasting sound, teams must pause and listen carefully for a response. Visual attraction methods may include light sources, such as beacons, flares, fires, strobes, patrol lights, or searchlights. Containment is an indirect search tactic focused on limiting the movement of a lost subject. It is best implemented in the very early stages of a search operation. The goal is straightforward: define a boundary and prevent the subject from leaving that area unnoticed. If containment is effective, one of two outcomes occurs. The subject remains within the contained area until search teams locate them, or they attempt to leave the area and are intercepted at a containment point. In theory, containment is simple. In practice, it can be difficult to achieve. Terrain, resource limitations, and unknown subject behavior can make establishing a true containment perimeter challenging. Containment can be implemented using several practical methods. Trail blocks involve placing small teams or signs on trails that lead away from the search area. The purpose is to monitor movement and intercept the subject if they attempt to exit along a defined path. Roadblocks operate similarly, but are positioned on roads or vehicle access points. If the search area is near public traffic, law enforcement personnel may be assigned to manage them. Lookouts are positioned at locations that provide a clear view into adjacent terrain, such as valleys, drainages, or open slopes. A small team stationed at a lookout can observe movement and potentially detect a subject traveling through the area. A camp-in refers to a small team assigned to remain at a fixed location for an extended period. A camp-in may also serve as a lookout, trail block, radio relay, or containment point. The purpose is continuous monitoring of a critical location. Let's move on to direct, or active search tactics. These involve placing personnel directly into the search area to locate the subject or identify clues. Active tactics include deploying hasty teams or grid searchers, using dogs to follow a subject's scent, and utilizing aircraft like helicopters and UAVs. The purpose of active tactics is to physically close the gap between searchers and the subject. In search and rescue, we use 4 primary search types. Type 1, hasty searches. Type 2, area or loose grid searches. Type 3, tight grid searches, and also evidence searches. Each of these serves a different purpose. Search types are selected based on subject profile, terrain, time since last contact, probability areas, and the objective of the assignment. In this section, we will break down the elements of each search type, how they are conducted, when they are appropriate, and what execution looks like for each one. A hasty search is fast and targeted. It is a deliberate, focused effort to quickly check specific high-probability areas. Hasty teams are assigned to locations where a subject is most likely to be found early in the operation. The purpose of a hasty search is twofold. First, to locate the subject quickly if they are in an obvious or high-probability location. Second, to gather information. Hasty teams often provide critical intelligence about terrain, access routes, hazards, signs of passage, and environmental conditions. The U.S. National Park Service, which handles thousands of search incidents annually, has recorded that hasty searches are responsible for resolving the vast majority of events within the first 12 to 24 hours. A 10-year review of their cases found that 96% of all search incidents were resolved in less than 1 day, largely through initial actions that include investigation, containment, and hasty search efforts. These statistics clearly demonstrate the effectiveness of hasty search tactics during the early stages of a search. Because of this, when a subject is believed to be alive, initiating hasty search efforts should be a top priority, even if command post setup or detailed map assignments are still underway. Early searcher presence increases the chances of quickly locating the subject or identifying clues that help shape the rest of the operation. It is important to understand that hasty does not mean rushed or careless. It means quick and efficient. In a hasty search, we focus on specific, high-probability locations and attractions. These often include campsites, abandoned or parked vehicles, cabins or shelters, trails and trail junctions, logging roads, game trails, or well-worn paths. Additionally, attraction points such as water sources, drainages, clearings, viewpoints, and overlooks are also appropriate targets. A key element of a hasty search is the knowledge that people tend to move along the path of least resistance. Trails, roads, ridgelines, drainages, and linear features often guide movement, as we learned in our analysis of lost person behavior. Also, a thorough check in the immediate vicinity of the last known point, LKP, or place last seen, frequently holds early clues, footprints, direction of travel, discarded items, or subtle disturbance. A hasty search is only as effective as the team conducting it. Hasty teams are typically made up of 2 to 4 highly mobile and experienced searchers. The emphasis is on speed, mobility, and decision-making in the field. A hasty team may operate on foot, but vehicles can also be used to quickly access high-probability areas and attraction points. Although critical at the initial onset of a search, hasty tactics can be used anytime, say for example to check new clues or to recheck high-probability areas when new information develops. Unlike hasty searches, which target specific, high-probability locations, an area or grid search is designed to systematically cover an assigned segment. Searchers focus on consistent terrain coverage rather than moving directly toward likely locations. The objective is thorough and methodical coverage of the entire search area. This type of search generally includes 2 variations: an area search, loose grid, and a tight grid search. For either method to be effective, segment boundaries must be clearly identifiable on a map, digital or paper, and, when possible, recognizable in the field. Boundaries are typically established using mapping tools, such as CalTopo, or with paper maps. Searchers should be proficient with both and clearly understand where their assignment begins and ends before starting the task. Within that segment, search crews spread their effort as evenly as possible. The goal is consistent coverage. Searchers use organized search lanes whenever terrain allows. Spacing is determined by vegetation, visibility, and the desired probability of detection, POD. Lanes should be maintained as consistently as conditions permit. Area and grid searches are deliberate and methodical. They trade speed for coverage and increased probability of detection. An area or loose grid search is designed to cover large areas with fewer resources than a tight grid. The emphasis is on coverage of the area rather than maximum thoroughness. Area searches typically use 3 or more searchers. Team members are spaced across a baseline, an imaginary line perpendicular to the direction of travel, before they begin advancing. As the team moves forward, each searcher is responsible for a search lane. The goal is to distribute effort evenly across the segment, which may require multiple passes. The amount of overlapping area between adjacent search lanes should be minimal. At the same time, the amount of area between lanes that is scanned by neither searcher should be minimal. The objective is consistent coverage without unnecessary duplication. Realistically, a loose grid search will rarely look perfect in the field. Terrain, vegetation, obstacles, and natural contours often require the lanes to bend, adjust, or temporarily shift around barriers. An effective area or grid search requires a leader. Leading this type of search requires focus and discipline. The leader's position depends on team size. With smaller groups, the leader may operate on one end of the line. With larger groups, the leader may position near the center to better communicate up and down the line. This helps maintain spacing and prevents drift. The leader's responsibilities include maintaining direction of travel, managing spacing, and ensuring even coverage. GPS tracking is often used to help maintain course while accounting for terrain features and contours. The leader must regularly check that searchers can maintain visual or voice contact with adjacent team members. No one should fall behind or move too far ahead. Pace is critical. If the line moves too quickly, probability of detection decreases. The leader ensures that the team moves deliberately and takes time to check under brush, around obstacles, and into likely concealment areas. It is not only the leader's responsibility to maintain alignment, it is also the responsibility of every searcher in the line. The searcher nearest the leader matches their pace and direction. That pattern continues down the line. Each person maintains spacing by watching the designated adjacent searcher, either to their left or right, depending on how the line is structured. This chain of alignment ensures that the line functions as a single unit rather than as individual searchers moving independently. A grid line is only as strong as its spacing discipline. Everyone works to maintain the line. When the team reaches the end of a pass, the line pivots. One searcher becomes the axis, while the rest of the line rotates around them as a pivot point. Spacing is reestablished, and the team spreads back out before beginning the next pass over unsearched terrain. The searcher on the pivot point may retrace their previous steps, ensuring there are no gaps in the coverage of the segment. In area or loose grid searches, lanes are relatively wide, often in the range of 5 to 10 paces, depending on terrain. A loose grid search can be particularly useful when the area is large and needs to be cleared at a moderate probability level, or a rapid reduction of uncertainty is needed. Area and grid searches often look simple in theory. However, executing them to a professional standard requires coordination, discipline, and experience. Since these methods are not routinely deployed, periodic hands-on training is necessary to maintain proficiency in the field. A tight grid search is a very thorough, high-coverage search of an assigned segment. Unlike a loose grid, this method prioritizes probability of detection over speed. Movement is slow, deliberate, and highly systematic. Searchers operate in a line with close spacing. Overlap between adjacent search lanes is encouraged. The goal is to reduce the chance that any clue, small item, or subject will go undetected. Tight grid searches are labor-intensive and closely associated with evidence-focused operations. When the objective shifts from locating a subject to ensuring that nothing is missed, tight spacing and slow, methodical movement become necessary. The decision to conduct a tight grid reflects a change in priority. Speed is no longer the driving factor. Thoroughness is. While different from a hasty or area search in focus, an evidence search is functionally executed as a highly disciplined, tight grid operation. The primary objective is not rapid coverage of terrain, but the careful location, identification, and protection of items of significance. Evidence searches are slow, controlled, and highly disciplined. Spacing is tight, and overlap is often deliberate. The goal is to minimize the possibility that even the smallest item is overlooked. Let's recap. Search tactics fall into two categories: passive and active. Passive or indirect methods focus on gathering information and encouraging a response from the subject without physically searching the area. These include investigation, attraction, and containment. Active or direct search methods involve physically searching the environment. These include hasty searches, area searches, tight grid searches, and evidence searches. There are several search patterns that may be used when doing an area search. This depends on terrain, assignment, and operational objective. These patterns provide structure and help ensure consistent coverage. In our discussion of area searches, we have focused primarily on lane-based searching. When maximum coverage is required, teams may conduct a second pass over the entire segment, with lanes running perpendicular to the original direction. This allows the area to be viewed from two different angles, increasing the likelihood of detecting subtle clues or concealed subjects and resulting in a true grid pattern. In a circular search, teams begin at a central point and move outward in expanding circles. It is most commonly used around the LKP or PLS. In a wheel pattern, searchers begin at the center of an area and move outward in spoke-like directions toward the perimeter. This method is useful when a central point is known, but the direction of travel is uncertain. In a zone search, the overall search area is divided into smaller sections or quadrants. Each zone is assigned to an individual or team. This method works well in large or complex areas and allows multiple teams to operate simultaneously. A corridor search focuses on a linear feature such as a road, trail, fence line, drainage, or power line. Unlike a hasty search, which may use a route primarily for rapid access to a destination, a corridor search deliberately examines the feature itself and includes a defined buffer area on either side. The intent is not simply to travel the route, but to actively search along and adjacent to it. Purposeful wandering is a behavior-based search technique in which searchers intentionally place themselves in the mindset of a lost subject. Instead of following a predetermined lane or grid, the searcher moves through terrain in a way that mirrors likely human decision-making, following natural travel corridors, choosing paths of least resistance, or moving toward terrain features that would attract or guide a lost individual. The objective is not random movement, but informed movement, based on lost person behavior and terrain influence. Up to this point, we've spent a great deal of time discussing how we move across the terrain, spacing, lanes, pivots, patterns, and tactics. But none of that matters if we fail at the most fundamental task, detection. Search effectiveness is not determined by how we walk. It is determined by what we see and what we fail to see. The searcher's cube is a simple observation technique used to ensure we do not miss what is around us. It is a mental, three-dimensional framework in which the searcher is at the center of the cube. The searcher deliberately scans up, down, left, right, forward, and behind. It is not a physical tool. It is a disciplined habit of observation. The searcher's cube should be used in all types of searches, when en route to your search area, and even when standing still. Searching at night in SAR is a high-stakes decision. If time is critical, searches may continue into the dark. Night operations do offer certain advantages. Light sources such as flashlights, fires, vehicle lights, and reflective materials may be easier to detect in darkness. Thermal imaging technology may also be more effective under certain nighttime conditions. However, night searching introduces significant hazards. Before deploying teams at night, the benefits must clearly outweigh the risks. Safety remains the priority. When operating at night, light discipline is critical. Do not shine lights into the eyes of other searchers. Red or green filters can help preserve night vision and reduce glare. When terrain allows, it is helpful to search at night in groups of 3. The center searcher acts as the anchor. This individual maintains direction of travel and illuminates the immediate center of the search path. Flank searchers scan the perimeter of the trail or lane. Their lights should overlap slightly with the center searcher's beam to ensure consistent coverage without leaving gaps. For ideal coverage, flashlights should be used in addition to headlamps. As always, searchers are looking for clues as well as the subject. Darkness does not eliminate the need for clue consciousness. When a clue is located, confirm it is not evidence. If the clue suggests a potential crime scene, withdraw to a safe perimeter and wait for direction from command or law enforcement. When a potential clue is located, the first step is evaluation. Even in remote terrain, it is uncommon to be in an area untouched by others. Food wrappers, disposable water bottles, and miscellaneous debris are frequently encountered. Not every item found in the field is related to the subject. Searchers must use sound judgment. Avoid creating unnecessary radio traffic or diverting resources for items that are clearly old, weathered, or unrelated. However, if there is any uncertainty, document the location. Fresh, unweathered items, clothing consistent with the subject's description, or objects believed to be associated with the subject should be treated as potential clues. Mark the location, preserve the area, and notify command post. If you come across footprints or track disturbances, avoid stepping on or disturbing them. Protect the integrity of the print until it can be assessed. Do not handle clues unless specifically directed to do so. One of the most important disciplines in search and rescue is staying on your assigned task. Every search assignment is part of a larger operational plan. Your segment and your spacing were chosen for a reason. It can be tempting to drift toward terrain that looks more promising, to investigate something outside your segment, or to adjust your lane width during a grid search. If something outside your segment appears significant, report it to your team leader. You may get approval to investigate, but do not leave your assignment unless directed to do so. Effective searching begins with your mindset. A positive mental attitude is not just motivational, it directly affects performance. Searchers should deliberately cultivate the expectation that they will find the subject or a clue. Aggressive observation is a necessary habit. As you approach a stump, assume something may be behind it. As you pass a bush, expect that something could be concealed within it. This deliberate, conscious attitude toward looking increases awareness and reduces complacency. Searching is not passive. It requires constant attentiveness and intention. Remember the searcher cube. Do not focus only on what is in front of you. Look up, down, to the sides, and behind you. Terrain and perspective change constantly as you move. Looking behind you provides a different perspective. Objects and people that are difficult to see from one angle may become obvious from another. Searching effectiveness increases when observation is deliberate, disciplined, and continuous. Search with the expectation of finding something, but do not limit yourself to what you expect to find. Subjects are often located in places or conditions that contradict initial assumptions. Remain alert to the unexpected.